Hello, I'm Amirtha Kidambi. I'm performing with the Resonant Festival on September 6th at 9 p.m. And I'll be performing with Darius Jones and the Elizabeth Caroline Unit, which is a group of 4 singers. Myself, Kristen Slip, Sarah Dyson, Jean-Carla Rodea, and at least 3 of us have been working together for quite some time, and I'll get into that in a second. But first, just a little bit about sort of me and where I'm coming from and how I got here to Brooklyn. I have been classically trained, as many of us in this sort of new music singing world are. And when I started out in music school, I was just there because I wanted to improve my songwriting. I always just wanted to write and record my own music, and I didn't really understand what it meant to study music. And what I found out was that in a typical music school setting, it means you learn arias and lieder and theory and things that at that time I didn't really, I had no intent to be a classical singer. And I got pretty into it and pursued, classical voice in my master's, but, increasingly became dissatisfied with the idea of actually pursuing opera. When I got to New York, I went to Brooklyn College, did my master's there, and started to get involved a lot with Ursula Oppens. And a lot of my musicology research, as I was also pursuing a thesis in musicology, was based in contemporary music. I did a lot of research on Edgar Varese. I had always been really, really interested in the intersections between a lot of different avant-garde areas, like, from, Black creative art music, free jazz, and the avant-garde classical in both Europe and America, and sort of like the progressive popular music traditions. So I had always been interested in the avant-garde and kind of started getting into new music. And again, sort of hit a wall in that I realized I didn't really want to specifically do one thing. I found the new music world to be really stuffy and institutional. And, I went to Darmstadt in 2010, which I think was a turning point in sort of coming to that conclusion, because I felt like there was still a really old world mentality surrounding a lot of new music communities that was difficult for me, and I also felt like it was really homogenous in both like demographics and even sound-wise. And so, and that's might be an overgeneralization, but that's just something that I was encountering and feeling a lot. But then I started to find that within new music and within, certain jazz areas and with the band that I play in, that there was a lot of like really interesting smaller intersections that I didn't realize were there until I really started to get into a lot of different types of things. So I decided to throw away the idea of having a career and just do any kind of thing that came to me that I was really, really interested in, and more importantly, work with people that I really believed in and people that I was inspired by. And in that way, sort of just the general titles fell away of new music or, avant-garde rock or art rock or whatever it is. That sort of leaves me with what I'm working on right now, which is some of the sampling of some of the projects, I guess, would be the band that I'm in, Seven Tears, who just released a record on Northern Spy, which was related to ESP Disc, which is a free jazz label, and now is sort of like a, art rock label, I guess. And that's like a very early music inspired band. And so for me, early music was one of my passions when I studied classically, yet I don't see myself joining a recorder consort, even though I have done that before. And it's very medieval and Renaissance inspired, lots of polyphonic vocals, but then the arrangements and instrumentation are very much inspired by, avant-garde classical and 20th century. So we have a percussionist who plays vibraphone, and crotales and orchestral bass drum and all this stuff, and then baritone guitar, a few different guitars, 12-string, and then I play harmonium, which is an Indian instrument, and sing also in an improvised Indian style, along with like a very pure toned sort of early music style. That's kind of a main project because we just released a record. And in September, I'll be working with Muhal Richard Abrams, who's one of the, basically forefathers of, creative music or the Black Arts Collective and Art Ensemble of Chicago. And he's basically an idol of mine. So we're going to be doing a performance at Roulette with a lot of different people, which I'm really excited about. And he asked me to sing in my native language, which was even more exciting, and which is called Tamil. And also I study South Indian classical music, vocal music with Nivedita Shivraj, who is a veena player, which is a South Indian stringed instrument, and a vocalist. And as far as that goes, I actually didn't study Carnatic South Indian vocals when I was growing up, but I studied Bharatanatyam, which is an Indian classical dance, for many, many years, for over a decade when I was young. And so I actually didn't get to do this because each study is very intense. So now I'm pursuing that and curating concerts at the Silent Barn, and hopefully soon at Issue Project Room, where I work, incorporating Indian music, curating Indian music with people that are sort of influenced by those traditions. And the project with Darius is, Darius Jones is a powerhouse of a person, of a man, of a creative mind. I saw him with his band Little Women in, I guess when I first moved to New York in 2009. And he was actually, his band was playing with my current bandmate Charlie Looker's band, Extra Life, and they were opening, and I was so blown away by this band. It was one of those things where, like, you come early to see the opener, and you're kind of like, should I stick around or not? And they were so captivating that I had to stay. Two tenor, two sax players, a drummer, and guitarist, electric guitarist. And they're somewhere in between, like, late Coltrane, free jazz, like Chelsea and crazy sort of 20th century avant-garde, noise, and like punk, really visceral, kind of like influenced by hardcore. And it's really spiritual. They are very influenced by Travis LaPlante. One of the sax players studies Qigong healing, and a lot of their music is sort of based in that, those Eastern practices and just spirituality, and sort of being connected to the world. And Darius sort of brings that to everything he does. All of his projects, they're kind of more than just music, both in like a interdisciplinary or multidisciplinary way, but also just in his approach and the way we approach the music. So originally he got four of us. Myself, who's, I've described as pretty wacky, varied background as a singer. Sarah Dyson, who he met in Virginia, who was an opera singer. He always heard her practicing in a practice room next to him when he was trying to practice when they were in school. And also Giancarlo Rodea, who's very definitely sings jazz and has been working in the jazz world, but is really influenced by just the music of Latin America, where she comes from, Central America. She comes from Mexico and is very inspired by that music, and sort of has her own sort of raw sound. And we had Julia Ulehla, who's really beautiful and wonderful, and was a mother, and is a mother, and we were really kind of influenced by having the baby around a lot, and talking to her about motherhood a lot. And we were very intentionally put together as 4 women. And Darius wanted a woman's point of view and women's voices. And I mean, he's talked about wanting to work in a more discreet range. So that's another reason he chose all women. But Julia moved to the north, or where did she go? To Canada. So that just happened. So we have Kristen Slip, who we just started working with, whose background is in jazz. I think she went to NEC. And it's very interesting because I think the music itself, like if I was really pressed to describe it, I would say, is like where no meets En Vogue, and we've talked about it that way before. But kind of like maybe that jarring conjunction is appropriate because it's like things that have been done before. It's not really fully tonal. It does have a lot of like rich jazz harmony, lush harmony in it. It has like some elements of like how the interplay is like chant melody like sometimes. But really, I think the most distinct thing about this group is that every vocalist timbre is completely different, and we're not just are we encouraged to use those timbres, it's like a requirement of the music, is that not only do we get to vary our timbre individually as much as we want, we should be completely distinct from the other singer, which is why he chose us. He wanted us to sing exactly how we sing, be true to ourselves in the cheesiest way, but in an authentic way. And he's a composer in that he's composed all this music. They're etudes. The purpose of the etudes is basically it's a language. I wish I had a piece of the music on me to show you, but the etudes are basically, right now I think it's a set of 15, but they're kind of a language which he jokingly sort of calls like solfege, as in soul, S-U-L, S-O-U-L, and it's meant to, we've been working on it for a year, and now with a new singer, we're going to keep working on it until we can improvise in this particular language, which includes, microtonality, different timbral inflections, like actual syllables that are like sort of we're learning to communicate with. It's like an abstract language. And it's supposed to be like an alien language also. So I mean that literally because it's connected to a mythology that he's been working with for a long time in his sort of more jazz quartet. And basically that story is called like the Manish Boy Epic. And we are creating something called the Oversoul Manual, which is this compendium of like etudes and different pieces that will come out of those. And the Elizabeth Caroline unit, just named after an ex-girlfriend of his that he thought was really strong and powerful and really interesting woman. He basically in the epic, there's this little boy called Manish Boy, and he comes from this planet, which I'm now forgetting the name of. Also, I believe Manish Boy is an Ellington reference, but he basically the fate of this world that he comes from sort of rests on him, but he doesn't know it. He's a little boy, and in the chaos of like a big war, he gets lost and sort of drifts away from this planet. And these 4 sort of goddess, somewhere in between goddesses and sort of protectors, these 4 women, which are us, sort of come looking for him and go out into the universe to find him. And a lot of these etudes are sort of them kind of talking together about his purpose, or it's abstract language. It's totally just syllables. But we make up the meaning in those syllables. So we're like talking about Manish Boy and his destiny and this planet, and you know, basically like, you know, his fate, and so it's meant to be a language that we can actually communicate in. And then along with that is Randall Wilcox, who is an illustrator, is working on a graphic novel. And he's already done, Darius's previous albums are a lead up to this. This is just another chapter. So he's already had an album called Big Girl, Smell My Dream. And Big Girl is one of the characters in this. And a Manish Boy is a character. I mean, each album is sort of focused on one of the characters of the epic. And I mean, it's a very like Sun Ra-esque world. We actually read a lot of Sun Ra poetry before we start, and it's very spiritual. Whenever we start by talking a lot to each other about our personal lives, about just how we're feeling about things, what's going on, like relationships, and we often have food together, we'll cook together. It was great when there was a baby running around. It's sort of an abstract spirituality, but it's something that I feel, you know, after we're done, when we sing together, there's this amazing thing. Actually, it's interesting having a new singer. We have communed so much in the four of us that having a new timbre, a new person, new entity in the room has completely changed the experience, and completely changed the sound. So we're sort of going to be adjusting back. Like, you couldn't just sub someone into this. So it's a really complete experience. It's really hard to even talk about in a way, but I think it's one of the most exciting projects I've ever been involved in, and it's really long term. And we are going to be rehearsing a lot, and we'll be in residence at Roulette next spring, sort of, you know, which will be like a fleshed out version. And what you'll see at Resonant Bodies is a presentation of a good chunk of the etudes that are sort of leading up to the full sets of pieces that will come out of it. So it's really exciting, and Darius being a horn player, for him, you know, when he was in Virginia, he conducted gospel choirs his whole life since he was really young, and always thinks about these groups of four women, of like you know, doo-wop and gospel groups, like kind of girl groups coming together, talking, communing, like gossiping, having fun, or not gossiping, but I mean, that sounds a little, but you know, talking with each other, having fun, and singing together. And that's kind of what he wants to happen. And as a instrumentalist, he's always looked towards singers and the voice, and has always tried to imitate the voice, and kind of uses it as, it feels it's like the primary instrument, like the instrument. And so he wanted to do something just with the voice, and he's never written for voices before. So I think it's both, makes it really wild and really raw, but also is a completely new approach. And he, now that he's been writing just for us, specifically for, you know, over a year now, I think he's just honing it in a way that is really fun for all of us. And it's we're really excited to share it with other singers and their people. It's funny because we've talked about this project so much, and I mean, like I said, we talk before every rehearsal a lot about like our philosophy as musicians, and my philosophy I think about constantly. I feel like it informs like every decision I make, which it didn't used to. I used to kind of be like, oh, here's a gig, somebody's emailing me about singing this piece, like, okay, you know. And which I still like sometimes I think is good to do, but I feel like just this project is very in line with how I'm feeling about music making, which is that it should be really personal, it should be really holistic, should be really challenging, or it's exciting when it's really challenging, but it should be able to communicate to everybody. And I think that's the thing that was really difficult for me about a lot of the music that I was involved in, was that I think things can get esoteric to a point, or abstract to a point, where it really is, it's left the audience or the another human being out of the equation. And while I think that's an interesting idea, it's not like something I want to do. And so this is really about communication and relationships and sounding like fucking cool. So that's the other thing. I mean, I think a lot depends on, you know, especially if you're working with a composer, a lot depends on the intent of the composer. Because I've worked with composers where I'm not even sure what they're communicating, but I do my best to try to find, like any singer, try to find something in that to you know, talk to an audience. And I mean, in the past, like certain composers I've worked on, like someone like George Crumb, who I really connect with, I felt like I could always like have a really clear intention when I sang his music. I guess communicating as in, like, the composer has to want to connect with the audience partly, and then the singers have to be able to sort of do that. And I don't know, I think it's just trying to be really honest in a performance, and I think it's a really abstract, difficult thing to do, but you know, I think when it starts with that intention, it's going to reach people and it's going to be able to communicate. Like Little Women, you know, it's super abrasive music. I mean, it's like incredibly abrasive, really intense music, but you'll see people leaving in like tears, or completely just like, it's abstract, but it communicates. There's something, there's intention behind it. And that's, I mean, if your intention is to impress another composer, or, you know, then that'll come across too.